Grading tests is tedious.
Time-consuming, stressful.
Very, very boring.
I feel like tests don't really give an accurate depiction of what the student can do.
I think that it definitely showed a difference between students who are good test takers versus bad test takers.
Sometimes you feel like they knew so much more during the process and the product doesn't always reflect that.
Questions are asked very directly towards one particular skill or concept, which is not the way we think about the world.
There's nothing fun about a test. And the purpose of our schools is to keep kids smiling and having fun while they're learning. We fix the problem by thinking about how can we assess students in a way that's fun and engaging and they'll get excited for.
Something that we're trying out this year is adding something called an AKA at the end of each of our units. An AKA stands for an application of knowledge assessment. It gives students the choice to creatively express and show what they've learned throughout that unit.
It allows for students to apply their knowledge in a unique and creative way that they choose.
It can be a written piece, it can be something with technology, it can be an arts and crafts thing.
The AKAs are really about measuring how deeply a student truly understands something and designing everything backwards from there. A test is usually, traditionally, just, okay, this is what you learned, have you mastered it? And that's valid and meaningful, but we often talk about how we want students prepared for the future and we don't know what the jobs are going to be and we have no idea what the problems they're going to be solving are, but what we can do is create flexible thinkers. So the research behind it goes into backwards design. We start from what is it that we deeply want students to understand, and it's not really about the Mayans or the Aztecs, it's about the way a society sets up culture or creates a culture. It's designing a way for students to take material they're learning and flexibly adapt it in different and various situations, and that's really what transfer is. The AKA really starts with the essential question for the unit.
Our new multidisciplinary units remove the barriers between subjects by asking essential questions that guide student learning across multiple content areas. For example, one essential question is, how do turning points lead to dynamic change? In ELA, students may explore how a protagonist evolves due to the relationships they form throughout the text. In history, students will examine the Neolithic Revolution as a catalyst for the development of complex civilization. In science, students will study chemical reactions and their outcomes.
So for this unit, the essential question that we've been focusing on is how might individuality conflict with conformity. So the social studies aspect of that, students have been looking at the different religions. So they're seeing how someone might be able to express individuality but also be a part of a religious group. And we're reading the novel, The City of Ember, and students are seeing how people in that civilization or city either act or show actions that make them an individual. So there's been a nice parallel between the two, and the AKA that's coming up, they're giving the creative choice again to come up with any type of advertisement or infomercial to spread the word about these two different ideas and kind of see where people stand with that.
Hello, my name is Paige Carty and I researched the grassland biome.
For Unit 3, the essential question was, how does location in the world support survival? So they've been learning a lot about biomes. And the science component has been physical and behavioral characteristics of animals and plants, living organisms that live in that biome. The social studies spin was, well, where is that biome located? Why does that biome have the type of weather that it has? And all of that is encompassed in ELA delivery.
My animal's the hawk and I made him shooting at water because he could fly high instead of stay down low where the fire is.
Anytime a student can then turn around and feel comfortable enough to present something that they feel invested in and really teach you about a global problem in the biome that they researched, that's really all you want as a teacher.
The best community to live in is a suburban community. Let's say you live in a city. You have a small amount of space.
So this unit focused on communities as well on the writing side on opinion writing. And it all kind of melded very nicely together. This big poster started probably about 2 weeks ago with just a house. That's how we started out. And it was in a rural community and we talked about that and what was in a rural community. And then little by little, we tried to show how this little community, this little rural community changed.
I made a kids-only school because kids have to learn.
They have talked about how it changes over time, but now they're really being asked, okay, so let's see it. Show us how communities change over time. What do you know? How can you use everything you've learned so far and show us what you know? And there's no multiple choice assessment that's what makes a rural community, but rather they're taking that information and applying it this way. So, for the social studies and the science, it makes it come to life. Otherwise, it's just learning and memorizing facts.
So all these people were starting to crowd in, and then it turned into an urban community.
I've seen that it definitely helps students. A lot of times without even asking, they would just make connections. If we were reading about a character in a book, they'd be like, oh, just like the early humans did that, and just like this happened in Mesopotamia. I don't think before students really were making those connections, or we weren't giving them the chance to show that they could make those connections.
There's all this opportunity for transfer of knowledge and information and that higher order critical thinking. Okay, I know all this stuff, so what? And the so what is, now I can apply it and be creative with it. It's exciting to see not what can a student do on a test, but what does my student really know? And also what's interesting to them.
The kids like it. They're really getting the choice to show what they know in a fun way.
I feel they're more excited about it. They really were interested in the journey and really proud of the end result.
It's something that I see that they're talking about outside of the classroom in lunch when they go home, and they're bringing those conversations and ideas back into the classroom, and they're taking what we talk about and bringing it outside.
So there's definitely many skills outside of the curriculum that are super important, that are embedded within the new curriculum that we've created.
They are learning how to talk to each other, how to listen to other people's ideas. They are also gaining valuable public speaking skills. So they're learning skills that they're going to need in the real world later on.
And all these areas have been kind of overlooked in traditional learning. They are what all the new studies show that students need as they go forward into the future. They need to be able to think critically and think creatively.
And I think often what was happening was we were delivering information day after day on a rigid schedule, and then it's assessment day, so it's time to perform. This is your assessment, and then tomorrow we're moving on to the next lesson. I think that constantly revisiting that essential question and showing students that learning is fun and you have to take ownership of your learning and what you put in is what you get out is much more meaningful and a much better gauge of what a student is understanding for a teacher than sitting and doing a written assessment.
It's always been my belief, like, these kids are not a test. This gives you such a clearer picture, and it allows them to show you what they know the way they do it best.
The AK is the final piece to show how deeply the students understand and how much meaning they were able to make out of the course, which really is the most important piece. However, there are mandates. We do have to make sure that they are meeting their grade level standards. So the whole entire unit has standards for English, it has science standards, it has a social studies framework, and we are grading with all of those in mind.
They need to find evidence. They need to be able to analyze and support their reasoning. It's like we're still being able to assess and grade those standards, but not in such a direct, explicit way.
In one AKA project, I could see all of the reading standards. I could see the text structure. So it's really a very clear picture of many standards in one, kind of all working together for a full project.
So they really love the AKs. And I think just through that, it's showing us that these tests are affecting them negatively. They'd rather show their learning and understanding in a creative way.
I think the AKs appeal to all different types of learners, whether you're a student that has different learning styles or you're an English language learner. It starts everybody in an equal playing field, and then you can take it to where you want to take it and what you have the ability to do.
I find that if they're learning without knowing that they're being assessed, you just get a more natural read on, a more natural read on them and where they're at. Whereas a test, they can either guess, they can just, not care and fill it in. I feel like this is a real picture of where they're at and gives the teacher so much more to work with.
It's ultimately beneficial for the students to really focus on this conceptual learning because they will have to do that in the future. We don't need students that can just explain the Mayans and the Aztecs anymore. We need students that might end up going to another planet one day and have to figure out how to set up a culture there.
I think they're really proud of their work. They're proud of bringing in some of their own information. What's not to love about being able to bring a part of me into the classroom and relate it?